Tonight, some of the world's richest countries try to avert a spiralling oil crisis, digging deep into their stockpiles. With the Strait of Hormuz effectively shut and refineries targeted, it is hoped 400 million barrels of emergency supplies will help prevent an economic meltdown. But the US president says he doesn't see the danger, claiming his forces have erased any threat from Iran in the Gulf.
Every one of their ships, just about all of their navy is gone. Bottom of the sea.
How reassured will tanker crews and maritime insurance firms be feeling about that? We report from the shores of Hormuz.
Iran controls the strait, and its effective closure raises the cost of the war, not just for its enemies, but for the entire world.
Also ahead, more Israeli strikes in Lebanon, where authorities say a week and a half of bombardment has killed more than 600 people. Iran's oil island, why this tiny strip of land could prove a huge target for the US and Israel. And Iran's sports minister declares his country won't take part in this year's World Cup, saying players won't be safe in North America. All that and more coming up in the world with me, Dominic Waghorn. Well, all of that ahead. But first, live to Kentucky, where Donald Trump is speaking to voters about the US economy as the war goes on in Iran. He's been talking about the war, but may have returned back to that pressing issue for Americans back home. What's happening to affordability and the cost of living?
An electric car. And I like him, and it's a great product, everything, but they have to have, we ended the mandate. We ended the mandate. Now you can have gasoline, you can have hybrid, you can have whatever the hell you want, you can have electric. They wanted you to buy an electric car by 2030. There's only one problem, you can't charge it. You ever see a charger? You're driving down the road, you're running a little low, and they say, electric charging plant, 150 miles up the road. That's a bad feeling. And we massively increased production of American oil, natural gas, and clean, beautiful Kentucky coal.
Well, that is the US president talking to Americans in Kentucky, part of a multi-state tour, trying to persuade voters that he hasn't forgotten about them and the domestic economy. If he goes back to talking about the war, we'll have a listen in, but if he goes back to it, we'll go back to have a listen to him. But on with the programme for now. And words like record and unprecedented have been used almost constantly since the US and Israel launched their war on Iran. And today, another history-making moment in efforts to rein in soaring energy prices caused by the conflict. There's to be the largest ever release of emergency oil from the International Energy Agency. 400 million barrels are being made available from the reserves of 32 countries. To put that in perspective, the previous record was 182 million barrels in response to Russia's invasion of Ukraine. If 400 million sounds a lot, here is the French president, Emmanuel Macron, explaining that that only buys about 20 days.
I think it's very important to see as well everything we can do in order to increase our global production and as well to engage with third parties to avoid any type of export restrictions for oil and gas.
Outmatched on the battlefield, Iran is deploying one of its most effective weapons, attacks on shipping and, by extension, the world economy. So right now, the war is boiling down to a single question. Who can take the pain the longest? We begin with this report from Sky's Sally Lockwood in the United Arab Emirates.
This conflict is striking deeper at the global economy. Oil storage facilities, one of the latest targets at Oman's port of Salalah. And with oil markets already shaken by disruption across the Gulf, the International Energy Agency has agreed to release a record volume of emergency oil reserves, the largest intervention in its history, in an attempt to steady prices.
But, to be clear, the most important thing for a return to stable flows of oil and gas is the resumption of transit through the Strait of Hormuz.
But right now, the Strait of Hormuz looks like this. Commercial shipping at a standstill in this strategic choke point for the world's energy. And it's become incredibly dangerous. This Thai-flagged ship caught fire after being hit by Iran while trying to escape the strait. In the past day, at least 3 vessels have been attacked by projectiles, likely drones.
Iran's Revolutionary Guard claimed responsibility for the attack on the Thai-flagged vessel, which is little surprise. They have threatened to attack any ship that tries to pass, and it's brought this shipping superhighway to a standstill. Iran controls the strait, and its effective closure raises the cost of the war, not just for its enemies, but for the entire world.
The US is working on plans to secure international ships in the strait. And US Central Command has targeted Iranian vessels suspected of being poised to lay mines in the waterway. The US president sounding much more upbeat than the global markets, even telling oil companies they should be sailing through Hormuz.
We took out just about all of their mine ships in one night. We're up to boat number 60. Every one of their ships, just about all of their Navy is gone at the bottom of the sea.
Iran's navy may be degraded, but its cheap drones are still hitting the arteries of global trade. Closing the Strait of Hormuz is one of Iran's most powerful weapons.
Any vessel whose ship or oil cargo belongs to the United States, the Zionist regime, or their hostile partners will be considered a legitimate target.
But it's not just the Gulf on edge tonight. Around 30 countries have voiced concern over renewed fighting in Lebanon, and outrage is growing after a residential building was hit in the latest wave of airstrikes. And Tehran has been hit in one of its heaviest nights of bombing so far. Israeli officials believe Iran's new supreme leader may have been wounded. He's not been seen in public since taking office. And tonight, most of Iran's women's football team, who recently turned down an offer of asylum in Australia, are returning home. Back to a country now at war, in a conflict felt far beyond the Middle East. Sally Lockwood, Sky News on the Strait of Hormuz.
Well, we're going to go back to Kentucky, where Donald Trump is in a factory speaking to American voters, and he's gone back to talking about the war in Iran, we think.
I was very proud of myself. I said, why didn't you use the weapon that we use on the drugs that come in by sea? Do you know that drugs by sea are down 98%? And I said, that's a hell of a weapon. And they said, well, give it a shot. It worked very well. We've knocked out, I think, 28 or 29, all of them, almost all of them. They'll all be gone. By the time I'm finished speaking, they'll be gone. These people work very fast. But I'm pleased to report that earlier today, the International Energy Agency agreed to coordinate the release of a record 400 million barrels of oil from various national petroleum reserves around the world, which will substantially reduce the oil prices as we end this threat to America and this threat to the world. We don't want to leave early, do we, huh? We got to finish the job, right? Over the past 11 days, our military has virtually destroyed Iran. Tough country. Their Air Force is gone, totally gone. That took the better part of about 3 hours. They no longer have radar. They don't have anti-aircraft equipment. They don't have anything. Their missiles are down 90%. Their drones are down 85%. We're blowing up the factories where they're made left and right. And frankly, nobody has ever seen anything like it. Nobody's ever seen anything like what you're witnessing now, and that can include the original killing of Soleimani and al-Baghdadi, 2 of the worst killers in the world that I did, as well as Operation Midnight Hammer, where we totally obliterated Iran's nuclear potential. We obliterated it. They don't have nuclear potential. And then after Midnight Hammer, and then we left, we figured that'll be the end of them for a while. But they started again. That's why we got to finish it, right? We don't want to go back every 2 years. And that's because, There'll be some day when you don't have me as president. You'll have, perhaps you'll have a weak, pathetic person like we've had in the past, mostly all. Like Barack Hussein Obama, who signed one of the worst deals ever with Iran, where they were going to give up everything. Remember when he filled up a 757 with billions of dollars of cash and sent it to Iran? Billions, people forget that. That's when I realized the presidency is very powerful. When you could put over $1 billion in an airplane and fly it over and give it to a foreign country that's your enemy. How stupid was that? But that deal, the Iran nuclear deal, gave them the right to have a nuclear weapon as of 3 years ago. If I didn't terminate that deal, I terminated it very quickly. If I didn't terminate that deal, they would have had nuclear weapons, and this world would right now be a different place, much different place. Believe me. And then Biden, he came along. He had no clue. He didn't know what the hell he was doing. But what they did was incredible. Everything they did was wrong. Think of it. Afghanistan, Biden, Afghanistan. The most embarrassing day in the history of our country. Embarrassing. 13 dead, but hundreds and hundreds are dead from, I count both sides, I do. I count both sides, sorry. But hundreds and hundreds of people dead. And instead of leaving from Bagram, they fled. I hate to even say it. There's no reason. We were in there. I was the one. We're going to get out. We're going to get out with strength and dignity. We're pounding the hell out of them. They didn't like Donald Trump, the Taliban. They would do anything I asked them to do. You know that. And this guy comes in, left all the equipment behind. I said, every piece of equipment will be taken out with us. They said, no, it's better to leave the plane. I said, why is it better? Well, I think it's more cost efficient to leave the plane. No. You got a brand new fighter jet, $150 million. You give it a tank of gas, little jet fuel, and you fly it out. They said, sir, I think it's better to leave the plane. These are the exact opposite generals as we have now. Do we love General Raisin Cane? He's great. But oil prices are already coming back down, and it's going to come down, but we're not leaving until that job is finished, and it's going to be very fast. It's going to be very fast, but we're not going to count on having competent presidents. We have to assume we're going to have incompetent ones, like the one we had last time that couldn't walk off a stage. Remember? He'd finish with a speech. The speech would last about 2 minutes. People would come out, not many, like 2 people. And he'd be finished with the speech, and then he could never find his way off the platform. He'd look around over here. There's so many stairs. I have 4 sets of stairs on this platform. Usually they have at least that. He couldn't find, or walking up Air Force One. Now, I know the problem with this, it can happen. You could slip, I could slip. I came downstairs today that was soaking wet. It's a little rainy today. And I have steel stairs, and I'm saying, ay. But I do it very slowly. I grab that thing because nobody cares if you set a speed record. The only thing I admired about Barack Hussein Obama, which was nothing actually, but the only thing is the way he bobbed down. Remember, he'd bob. Hey, you talk about unpresidential. He's bobbing, and I couldn't believe that he made it without at least a noticeable major fall. But Biden was the opposite. Biden couldn't even walk up the stairs. He fell 3 times walking up the... And the world watches that, and they don't like seeing it, although they actually do like seeing it, because they say, what the hell is going on? Or when he fell at the Air Force Academy, right? And the general was standing there, could have caught him, but he didn't want to drop the paper that he's holding in his hand. So Biden went down for the count. Now, we have a country now that's respected, and we don't play games, and we have the greatest military, and it's so nice to see. It's so nice to see.
So Donald Trump there, moving on to the relative abilities of his predecessors to go up and down stairs. But before that, he was talking about the war, and he said that the job has got to be finished. We can talk now to our US correspondent, David Blevins, I think. David, what do you make of that? Because he went to Kentucky to try and, I think, remind Americans that he is also focused on domestic issues, on the domestic economy. Before he got back onto Biden and Obama, he was talking a lot about the war, talking a lot about foreign affairs again. Is that going to help him, do you think? How much trouble is he in?
Well, there's something deeply ironic, isn't there, about people holding lower prices placards behind Donald Trump when we've seen record oil prices. Clearly, he's trying to get back on message to tell this audience in Kentucky he's putting America first because it's midterm election year, in many ways sidestepping what's going on in the Strait of Hormuz. He has told them in the last few minutes that the war will be over soon. We know that the US have been bombing Iranian mine-laying vessels there because they're desperate to secure that route again. As we know, it is the world's busiest oil shipping route. And because there is disruption there, prices are up at home. That is a major problem for Donald Trump because throughout the election campaign, he told the American people he would be the person to address their affordability issues. And in this midterm election year, he's got to convince them, he's got to persuade them again that he's still on that message. So in many ways, he can't completely ignore what's going on with regard to the war, but he doesn't want his base to think he has completely forgotten the election pledges he made.
And more bad news, I think, for the president, David, in what the American military is finding out about the attack on that school at the beginning of this war that killed so many school children in Iran.
Yes, Dom, it's an ongoing investigation. This is just a preliminary report at this stage, but it is damning to say the least. The findings include that it is likely the United States fired the missile. I think the word likely is doing some heavy lifting there, given the mounting evidence that the missile did not veer off, as some people were suggesting, but that the school had been wrongly identified as a military target. And significantly, they are telling us that while the intelligence gathering was done by the Defense Intelligence Agency here in the United States, there is some feed into that from other allies. And a short time ago, a US official told our colleagues at NBC that Israel had been involved in that process. Let me just quote from that official for a moment. The US typically goes through a validation process that includes multiple intelligence organizations before a strike is approved. The official says it's not clear where in the target selection process a breakdown occurred that may have caused the likely US strike on this school. So all of this is pointing towards a spectacular intelligence failure, and one that cost the lives of 165 people, most of them school children, tragically.
David Blevins, thank you very much in Washington for that update. Well, more now on Iran's confirmation of its supreme leader, Mojtaba Khamenei, who was injured during Israeli and US strikes that killed his father, and predecessor Ali Khamenei, now confirmed by both Iranian and Western sources that he was injured. Our correspondent Lisa Holland is in Jerusalem. Lisa, there's been a lot of speculation about just how badly injured he is. What are the Israelis saying and what are the Iranians saying about it?
Yes, well, I mean, there's been rumours for the last few days about exactly how Mojtaba Khamenei was injured, to what extent. And, of course, over the course of the last 3 days since he was confirmed as the new supreme leader of Iran, nothing has been heard from him, apart from some images which are historic images, also some suggestion of AI-generated images. However, we have now heard from several different sources, one in particular, the Iranian ambassador to Cyprus, who said that Mojtaba Khamenei is lucky to be alive, which suggests that his injuries really could be quite serious, although that contrasts with other Iranian officials who are saying that he was lightly injured. I mean, we simply don't know at the moment, which leads, of course, to quite a lot of speculation as to why he's not been seen. Has he been disfigured in some way? It's pure speculation. Can he walk? Have his legs been significantly injured? Some suggestion that he's broken at least a foot and other injuries to the lower part of his body. But I think until he's actually seen in person and makes some kind of speech, that speculation will continue.
Israeli officials, but also those in Washington, have been talking up how much they've degraded the Iranian threat, and yet the Iranians seem able to continue firing drones and missiles, doing a lot of damage around the region. How convinced do you think we should be by what both the Americans and the Israelis are saying?
I mean, look, it's incredibly difficult to know exactly to what extent the Iranian military has specifically been degraded. We know, of course, they have been significantly degraded, but those estimations go up from Donald Trump all the time, and of course he's painting quite an impressive picture. I mean, there's no doubt that the military balloon has been burst, but nevertheless, stuff is still being launched from Iran. Just a few hours ago here in Jerusalem, hearing the sirens overnight, sirens elsewhere in the country. The fact is, though, of course, that because of Israel's impressive drone system, that stuff, those missiles, are not getting through, although, of course, there have been like a couple of instances of shrapnel and one or two missiles, but, you know, on a large scale, it's not getting through, but it is still being launched, which suggests that the military hasn't been entirely wiped out, as Donald Trump would paint that picture. I think what we do know is, whilst the military has been heavily degraded in Iran, nevertheless, its psyche is still embedded in the minds of the Iranian people, and I think that perhaps Israelis might have expected by now there could have been some sort of sense of uprising, but it's not happened.
Jerusalem, thank you for the update for now. We're going to go back to Kentucky now, where Donald Trump has been speaking about the
Dr.
war
Oz, can you believe
in Iran. He had to take a bit of a pause because someone seemed to have had a bit of a turn behind him, possibly passing out because of the heat. Yeah.
Thank you, Oz.
A bystander, someone who's in the crowd behind him, an audience member who is being helped away now by, looks like police or security guards. Anyway, that has punctuated Donald Trump's address there in Kentucky, which was focusing, we were told by the White House, going to focus mainly on the domestic economy, on Donald Trump trying to focus his mind and the minds of voters back on things at home, but he talked a lot about the war in the early comments of that speech. Yeah, looks like someone just felt ill and is now being taken away to be looked at, presumably. Donald Trump got to get back into his stride, talking about a range of issues, but ranging from the war to Joe Biden and Barack Obama, but also about the affordability issue and what is happening in the Gulf, what that's doing to prices, pump prices in America. Now, how much impact will 400 million barrels of oil that G7 countries are now releasing in an emergency move, how much is that going to affect things? And how worried should we be about an energy shock? Well, here's our economics and data editor, Ed Conway, with more on that.
Some pretty extraordinary news. Just recently, the International Energy Agency, which is this body, it's the group for developed economies to deal with energy shocks like this, has just announced the biggest intervention it's ever made in energy markets. And what they're doing is they're releasing, and when I say they, that's kind of rich countries around the world, they're releasing an unprecedented amount of oil stockpiles. This is basically emergency oil supplies onto the global market to try and deal with what's happening with the oil price. But here's the interesting thing. If you look at the oil price, and this is just looking over the last few days, obviously it went up really sharply, up above $100 a barrel on Monday. Donald Trump came out and said the war is complete, or words to that effect, and then it came down pretty sharply after that. But here's what's striking, OK? So we just had this news of the IEA stock release. Look at what happened to the price afterwards. Basically, it did nothing. OK, and that raises the question, why is that? And part of the answer comes back to the flows of oil around the world and how much we have right now. Now, the big picture here is global crude oil demand is about 100 million barrels of oil a day. And with the Strait of Hormuz being closed, basically 15 million of those barrels have kind of gone. You know, you're not easily able to get hold of them. And so all of this is about trying to fill that gap. And when you look at the Strait of Hormuz, so look at the area here, so that is the area through which shipping's not passing at the moment. Most of the world's oil, or kind of 20% of the world's oil, goes through there. There are pipelines all around the region, raising the question, could you just get it into through those pipelines instead of shipping it out? Well, you can get a certain amount out of this pipeline that goes across Saudi Arabia, the East-West pipeline. There's another pipeline over here that goes kind of from that part of the UAE to that part to Fujairah. And there is a bit of capacity, so you can get extra 5 million barrels a day out of that one, an extra 0.7 million out of that one. Add that up, OK, and that gap I was talking about earlier, 15 million barrels, you're starting to get towards it. And here's what's kind of striking. You're still 9.25 million barrels short. But if you look at this figure that we just got from the IEA, the really important chart isn't about 400 million barrels, which is the total amount they say they're going to release, but it's just how much they're planning to do each day. And in previous episodes like this, it's been about 2 million barrels a day. This time around, it might well be more. Analysts think potentially, the IEA hasn't confirmed this, but analysts think potentially 4, maybe even 5 million barrels of oil a day. If that's the case, add that to this kind of shortfall, and instead of being kind of 7 million barrels short, we're kind of 5 or so million barrels short. So you see we're starting to get to close that gap. But even so, there is a gap. And that's part of the reason why oil prices are still so high. You have a shortage of oil flowing around the world. And so all around the world, you're starting to see the consequences. In India, in Mangalore, one of the refineries has issued a force majeure note, so basically kind of cancelling contracts. Elsewhere in India, supplies of LPG, so liquefied petroleum gas, they've been rationed. And then also look in places like Thailand, in Vietnam, employees have been urged to work from home. And that's before you count on what's happening closer afield in Europe. We know what's happening to petrol prices in the UK. In Germany, there's been a clampdown on petrol prices. And those kind of measures are expected only to continue as oil prices remain high in the coming days.
Ed Conway there. We're going to dig deeper into Iran's oil business now. Look at the heart of it. It is centred somewhere most have never heard of. Kharg Island, a small barren strip of land at the top of the Gulf. It is home to Iran's main export terminal. Oil is loaded from the island onto supertankers and sent mostly to China. Seizing Kharg may look like an obvious US-Israeli objective, but doing so risks even more ripples through the world energy market. Well, normally, Iran exports 90% of its crude oil through Kharg Island, sending it through the Strait of Hormuz. Oil makes up about 50% of Iran's entire export earnings. China buys most of it, accused of using covert black market channels that get around Western sanctions. Earlier, I discussed Kharg Island with Dr. Neil Quilliam, energy policy, geopolitics and foreign affairs specialist at Chatham House. I began by asking him if he thinks today's big emergency oil release will be enough to calm energy markets.
I don't think so. I think it will sort of be a stay of execution. We don't know the schedule of the release. It's 400 million barrels that's there to sort of stay over a period of 60 days, but it's not going to plug the gap for long. So it really depends how long this conflict's going to go on for. It's not going to make a difference over the longer term. This is oil that's all held in storage, and it's there for an emergency such as this. Hence, the IEA has been signalling for the last 2 days that it's going to be coming onto the market. But it won't be enough to plug the gap over the longer term. It's just about sentiment at the moment. I mean, the price hasn't even dropped today on the back of this news.
And this is all for those who've not been paying attention, because the Strait of Hormuz, which is that sort of pinch point in the eastern end of the Persian Gulf, the Arabian Gulf, that has been blocked effectively because it's just too expensive to send ships through it because of what the Iranians are doing there. Is there, in your opinion, is there a way the Americans can kind of deal with that in a military sense or any other way to unblock that strait?
I mean, they could deploy more vessels, and President Trump has already said that they're willing to send vessels to the military to escort ships through the strait. I'm not sure or convinced that ship owners, operators, and even crews are going to want to sort of go through the strait unless they can have ironclad guarantees. But they can't, because if you have those US vessels there, they're going to be like sitting ducks. The Iranians are going to sort of rub their hands and be firing their missiles, their drones, using asymmetric warfare to try to target those vessels. And if they can score a hit against a US Navy vessel, I mean, they're going to see that as a major victory, and that's going to be a big issue back in the US.
We're all trying to kind of work out what the next move is here. And one of the moves the Americans are thought to be considering is having a go at Kharg Island. Now, explain why that's important. Where is it? What does it do? And why taking it would make a difference to this war?
So Kharg Island, it's a small landmass, about 3 miles long. It's right in the north of the Gulf. It's 20 miles outside of Iran. It serves as the main terminal, the main point of export for 90% of Iran's crude. So it's the linchpin for the oil industry. The Iranians have a few terminals alongside the coastline, but because the coastal waters are so shallow, the VLCCs, the very large crude carriers, cannot actually pull alongside. So they have to go to Kharg Island.
Well, so you could actually take that and effectively kind of destroy Iran's ability to get its oil out of the country.
More or less, yes. I mean, Iran does have other options. It does have a port, Jask, which is in the Gulf of Oman, so that can sort of, bypass Hormuz. And we saw today a vessel carrying 2 million barrels off to China. So it does have a way of evacuating its oil. But I mean, if the US were to seize Kharg, it would essentially, cause Iran's oil industry to sort of grind to a halt. You would have them able to produce and store the oil, but you would have the US holding Kharg and holding it hostage, essentially.
So effectively turning off the tap. And I think Donald Trump has been aware of Kharg Island since the 80s, where he said this. He said, one bullet shot at one of our men or ships, and I would do a number on Kharg Island. I'd go in and take it, which makes you wonder why he hasn't done so yet.
I think there are some major risks around doing that. Number one, if they were to go in and take that would sort of send the oil markets in a tailspin, because suddenly it's not about just the short term, it's the long term. I mean, Iran is a major oil producer. It's been under sanctions for 20 years odd. It exports on a good day when the strait is open 1.3 to 1.4 million barrels a day of oil. You would immediately sort of be long-term taking that off the market. The US would be like sitting ducks as well. Iran would certainly use missiles, drones, all the means available to it to try to retake or to at least attack the island, at least to frustrate US efforts at holding on to it. The final complication would be, how does Donald Trump sort of declare victory and then withdraw or extract his forces from Kharg Island? That's, that will be a major conundrum for him.
I think people watching are going to want to know most of all from you, the oil expert. Is there a way out of this, do you think, for Donald Trump? Can he open up the Strait of Hormuz? Because currently the war is going in a bad direction economically, not for America, for the region and for the whole of the world, do you think? If not, how does he get out of this, do you think?
I have very little confidence that he can open the Strait of Hormuz, keep it open. The Iranians will use every means available to frustrate those efforts, and that every time they do that, that's a risk to US personnel, military personnel, and that's an issue for him back at home. I think the only thing he can really do is wake up one day, just decide, OK, we've destroyed the nuclear infrastructure, we've destroyed the ballistic missile program and the launchers, we've set back, or at least Israel set back Hezbollah, the Houthis are quiet, Hamas has been destroyed. Victory. I'm claiming victory now. We're going home. It's the only way I can see a real way out of this, because the IEA release is not enough over the longer term. The oil that's currently sitting and can't be evacuated from the Strait of Hormuz cannot be compensated by any other means in the world.
In all, the war unleashed by the US and Israel nearly 2 weeks ago has killed about 2,000 people, mostly in Iran and Lebanon. Israeli airstrikes have pounded parts of Lebanon, and Beirut's targeting Hezbollah, which is accused of coordinating with Iran to fire missiles at Israel. Lebanon was discussed this afternoon at the UN Security Council.
Hezbollah must cease its attacks on Israel and cooperate with the government's efforts to assert full state authority and establish a monopoly over weapons. Israel must halt its military campaign in Lebanon and withdraw its forces from Lebanese territory.
Well, our international correspondent John Sparks has been in southern Beirut today, where he says there is no front line in the Israel-Hezbollah war.
The southern suburbs of Beirut, they've been pounded through the night. I mean, you need to be a very sound sleeper to get through that. I think just about everybody in the city has been kept awake tonight, particularly where I am in a district very close to the center. It's a middle-income district. It's densely populated. It's mixed. Shia, Sunni, Christian. They live here, and one of the apartment buildings has been subjected to pretty major attack. Just going to move my colleague back a little bit. It's pretty frenetic here, people cleaning up the streets. You can see that blast. It has sprayed glass and rubble, shards of metal all over the place. I wouldn't call it a precision strike, more like a targeted strike. It's taken out parts of four floors in this building. You can see they're trying to sort things out here. It's a bit of a metaphor for Beirut. You know, you've had a missile strike on an apartment building, and somehow life continues. I don't want to make sure we don't get our feet run over. Okay. Right, here we're going to move back a bit, so we're in the way. But it's a targeted strike by the Israelis. There was no evacuation order here. There was no warning to local residents. We assume they were after specific individuals, and they've done this before, just behind you there, yeah. They've done this before on Sunday morning, a hotel near to here called the Ramada Plaza. The Israelis took out a corner room there. They said they killed 4 senior commanders of Iran's Revolutionary Guards, who the Israelis say they have personnel here. They're working as military advisors to Hezbollah. And I think it goes to show there is no front line in Lebanon. The Israelis can attack the location of their choosing at the time of their choosing. And you can see the aftermath of that here. Yeah, here, we're just going to move back. It's pretty frenetic here. There's a lot of cleaning up and stuff going on. They've reattached the electricity. They're trying to get the road functioning again. And I suppose that's an example of the government of this country functioning to a certain extent, but they're certainly not able to maintain the situation. They're certainly not able to rein Hezbollah in, and the government here certainly not able to do anything about the Israeli strikes either. I mean, it has turned into a real humanitarian disaster in this country. You're looking at almost 600 people have been killed, hundreds of thousands of people have been displaced, and you'll have people from here looking for somewhere else to stay as well. So I mean, it's really, nobody's been untouched by this in Lebanon.
John Sparks in a very noisy Beirut there. Well, this is the world. Still to come tonight. The US Congress digs deeper into Jeffrey Epstein's wealth and business ties, questioning the late paedophile's former accountant.
We're trying to see as much as we can.
We're in an area that's just been reclaimed.
Mr. Zuma, Sky News.
People are directly protesting.
The whole neighborhood is rallied around her.
It's been impenetrable to journalists over the last 2 years of war in Sudan.
I've been waiting for this for 2 years. It doesn't feel like a big homecoming.
It was never going to be pretty.
War isn't pretty.
What's the best thing about being a Sky News journalist?
Who's funnier?
Being a Sky News journalist.
A special edition of The World with me, Yalda Hakim.
Pakistan has the right to respond.
You're like, what?
Historic day here today. Congratulations, this is a huge moment. But what happens now?
The US House Committee investigating Jeffrey Epstein has today been putting questions to the late sex offender's former accountant, Richard Khan. Let's bring in our US correspondent, James Matthews. James, you might think that Epstein's accountant would have secrets to spill. Did he disappoint or did he deliver?
It disappointed anybody with that notion. I have to say, Dom, his opening statement said this: I wasn't aware of the nature or extent of Epstein's abuse of so many women until after Epstein's death. So he's saying this guy who knew him, was his accountant for more than 10 years, is executor of his estate. He's saying he didn't really know Epstein, the criminal, didn't socialise with him, and essentially he had nothing to do with his criminal behaviour. There's no suggestion that Richard Khan was involved in any wrongdoing, but there is a view, particularly held by survivors and others, that this is the man, because he was so entrenched in the finances and the wealth of Epstein, that a man who created the financial infrastructure around him. There are those who believe that, given those circumstances, you know, there will be knowledge within that of what went on in Jeffrey Epstein's orbit. And, you know, the question being, did this enable Epstein to any extent? So that's what this committee are trying to get at in this Q&A session, which has been ongoing over the course of today. The names Mandelson, Andrew Mountbatten-Windsor and Sarah Ferguson came up, Dom, I can tell you. I spoke to Suhas Subramaniam. He's one of the Democratic members of this committee. And he said, look, given the size and the scale of the accountancy structure around Jeffrey Epstein, these three are players within that. Therefore, we're going to ask this guy, Richard Khan, about these three. So he told me about that. He also mentioned another name, Sir Keir Starmer. That came up because of events in the UK today, of course. These files that indicate there was fair warning to Sir Keir Starmer about reputational damage of, you know, in appointing Peter Mandelson to be the ambassador to Washington. So a lot going on. Let's listen to Suhas Subramaniam. He'll distill it.
We believe that there's clearly a financial trail leading to Sarah Ferguson, leading to Andrew Mountbatten-Windsor, and leading to Mr. Mendelson. And we want to know all about it. We want to know why those payments were made, what Richard Khan and the lawyer, Darren Endyke, who we're going to interview later, what they know about it. And I think they have a lot of information to give us.
Let me ask you, today files have been released that indicate the British government, British Prime Minister, was told of reputational risk in appointing Peter Mandelson as the ambassador to Washington, D.C. I just wonder what your observations are on that.
Well, before I hire someone, I want to know all about them, and I want to know what the downsides are. And so it's surprising to me that he wouldn't know about Mandelson's relationship with Epstein, and it's surprising to me that he still went forward and appointed him.
Yeah, the fact that he was told there was reputational risk, that was made clear. Is that a failing on his part, do you think?
I think it is. I mean, you have to be very careful about who you surround yourself with and who you appoint.
There you go, Dom, a pretty withering critique of the UK Prime Minister. Donald Trump, of course, has been similarly unflattering in his commentary on Sir Keir Starmer. That tone doesn't change today on this side of the Atlantic, at least.
James Matthews in Washington, thank you for now. This is The World. Next up, Iran has announced it will boycott this year's FIFA World Cup. We'll speak to our sports correspondent, Rob Harris, shortly.
I urge you not to look away. If Hamas hands the hostages over, they will end this conflict. The world has been watching. Good to see you again. How are you? Did she say how he was?
The conditions are awful.
The jets were ordered to come back.
Historic day here today. How will you respond if India does launch airstrikes?
They'll be all out to war.
I'm just going to put some body armor on. I'm Yalda Hakim.
We're trying to see as much as we can.
We're in an area that's just been reclaimed.
Mr. Zuma, Sky News. People are directly protesting. The whole neighborhood is rallied around her.
It's been impenetrable to journalists over the last 2 years of war in Sudan.
I've been waiting for this for 2 years. It doesn't feel like a big homecoming.
It was never going to be pretty.
War isn't pretty.
I'm Cordelia Lynch, Sky's Asia correspondent, based here in Bangkok.
These slums, once gripped by fear and death.
There is far less bloodshed now, but it hasn't gone away.
Who's asking you to kill?
The police will give me the orders, and after I kill the target, I throw the gun away.
We try our best to uncover and unpick a fast-changing and deeply complex region.
These large waterways provided an excellent source of body disposal.
This is the Buriganga River, where victims who'd allegedly been shot dead were dumped. Sheikh Hasina, how confident are you that she will stand trial?
She will stand trial, there's no doubt about that.
We're going to take you to the very heart of a criminal network, going undercover inside Southeast Asia's scam centres for the very first time.
We won't have any problems with police, it's okay.
Just seen Imran Khan leave, and as we understand it, he's just been shot in the leg.
They have decided that the only way they'll allow elections is if I'm inside jail or killed.
Sky News get the full story first.
Chinese vessels start encircling the boat we're on, blocking its path.
The Chinese are now deploying water cannons, firing it directly towards our boat. We've discovered doctors across Delhi dishing out pills like this, claiming they will provide a lifelong cure for homosexuality.
Rohingya people fleeing an escalating civil war.
The situation here in Cox's is desperate. An already insecure place does feel a lot more precarious.
The best thing about being a Sky News journalist?
They call him the king of the jungle.
Being a Sky News journalist.
Yusra Al-Baghir has this report.
And this is what's left of it.
As a woman of colour, how did the Harris campaign speak to you?
People risk their lives to speak to us for this report.
Mr. Zuma, Sky News. We're trying to see as much as we can.
The best thing about being a Sky News journalist? I'm going to take you behind the scenes here for Election Night Live. They have gone up and up. Big Sky News journalist. Ed Conway. Sky News, is anyone going to talk to us? Mortgage rates did go up very sharply during your time in office. Here it is. First off, just the scale of what we're looking at. Our data shows it's been happening. Question is, why it hasn't been stopped.
Welcome back. Well, Iran has announced it will boycott this year's FIFA World Cup, with the country's sports minister telling state media there are no circumstances where they could participate in an event hosted by the United States.
This corrupt government has assassinated our leader, so we are not in a situation to participate in the World Cup. Our players are not secure at all, and due to the wicked acts they have done against Iran, they have imposed 2 wars on us over just 8 or 9 months and have killed and martyred thousands of our people. Definitely, it's not possible for us to take part in the World Cup.
Well, for more on this now, we'll cross to our sports correspondent, Rob Harris. Rob, tell us more about the Iranians' reasons for this.
Well, the rhetoric has really been increasing over the last, 10 days or so since the war began. And they're in a situation, as they see it, that a team due to participate in the World Cup is being bombed by one of the hosts, the United States, and killing their leader. And, you know, we've been hearing the outrage from there about how their treatment and how they'd feel in the US, and believing they can't, in these circumstances, go and play in the US. Also, they are linking it to what's happened with the Iranian women's team in Australia. The fact several members of the team have decided to accept those humanitarian visas to seek asylum in the country, and the fact that Donald Trump encouraged Australia to grant them asylum. We saw at the start of the tournament there, the Women's World Cup for Iran, where some of the players didn't sing the national anthem, with them branded traitors on state TV. They did sing the anthem later on in the competition. Before then, they were knocked out in the group stage. So this is a real problem that is now being created for FIFA as a result of this. Gianni Infantino, the FIFA president, was at the White House yesterday. He said he had assurances from Donald Trump that the Iranian team will be welcome, just a week after Trump said he didn't care if Iran did choose to participate. And this is a really difficult situation that they're in. Now, in all this, we've not heard from FIFA if they've attempted to contact Iran at all or to hold talks with them. And at the moment, it's coming from the sports minister level, it's coming from the head of the Football Federation of Iran, these threats to boycott the World Cup. No sense if they've actually submitted that official paperwork, as it were, to FIFA to say, we're not coming to the US. And they are due to play all their group games in the US, in California, in LA and in Seattle.
I mean, it's going to be a huge disappointment, isn't it, for Iranian football fans on top of everything else they're living through at the moment. I suppose one question comes to mind, you know, are they going to be suffering any penalties from FIFA for putting out this unexpectedly?
Well, it would be a situation we've not seen for decades. It was 1950 that teams last withdrew from the World Cup, actually over travel issues. India and France at the time didn't want to go to Brazil. Now, where things stand now is Iran could be sanctioned, they could be banned going forward to the 2030 World Cup even. And, you know, there'll be questions about who then takes Iran's place in the tournament, and the regulations really just leave it to the FIFA leadership to decide. There isn't a clear-cut formula to work out. Both Iraq and the United Arab Emirates would have claims on that place based on their qualifying position. But it would be a situation that would really put FIFA right in the crosshairs of this geopolitical upheaval that's engulfing the Middle East. And they can't separate themselves from the politics. Very hard for Gianni Infantino to put himself as a sports figure above it all, because it was only in December I was in Washington, D.C., when the FIFA leader was handing out a new peace prize to Donald Trump to appease him after he missed out on the Nobel Prize. And, you know, he's heavily associated himself with Trump and supporting his MAGA agenda. He was even wearing a MAGA-approved USA hat when he was at the Board of Peace event in Washington just a couple of weeks ago.
We've had this drama, of course, involving the Iranian female footballers in Australia. What's the latest on that?
Well, the team has now left, minus those players who have decided to accept the humanitarian visas in Australia. One is believed now to have rejected that and has travelled with the team. We don't know what pressures, what conditions she was under. They are reported to be in Malaysia now, obviously trying to find a route back to Iran. And obviously a very challenging situation for them on state TV, branded traitors, for not singing the anthem at the opening game at the Asian Cup in Australia. They did then later on. What sort of pressure was brought to bear on the team from those linked to the regime? And, you know, while FIFA has regulations about ensuring national football associations are separate from the politics and there isn't any government interference, this is one of those situations where questions would be raised about that. But obviously there will be deep concerns now about their safety as they do head back to Iran. And what this is showing is the sporting implications, the ripples from this conflict now impacting the sporting world, Iran's women's teams, the Iran's men's team as well. Iran's men are, I understand, still due to be playing a match in Jordan in a few weeks' time.
Rob Harris with the latest there on Iran's female football team and what the country is doing or will not be doing in the World Cup in North America later this year. That's it for tonight's edition of The World. Jonathan Samuels is here tomorrow night at 9 p.m. Stay with Sky News if you can. Next up, it is The Wrap.